This week on The Droids, we're talking about the Emmy nominations for The Mandalorian, as well as Star Wars Visions. We got our first look at it. All that and oh so much more on The Droids. Welcome back to The Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Alongside Ryan, I am Mike, and we have been abandoned, and I think the reason why is there's a little jealousy, Ryan, because you and I have been nominated for a prestige podcast Emmy, and Chris and Sam have been left behind. It's just the two of us. You and I, we've only done maybe a handful of Droid episodes on our own, but that's what we submitted. That was the episode we submitted, so they only included us, even though all four of us are on the pod.
They're dropping like flies. Yeah. We are living Mike Birbiglia's Don't Think Twice. And we are both the Keegan-Michael Key character.
Oh, man. I've seen that, but it's long enough now that I'm like, oh, man, I got to go back and think about the Keegan-Michael Key character.
Well, I spoiled it for everyone. He gets...
Yeah, because it's Britta is the one left behind, right?
Well, it's like everybody's kind of left behind.
True, but we're getting more Britta's story in that. And I'm saying Britta, but it's...
you mean Gillian Jacobs?
Gillian Jacobs, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's more nuanced. I mean, go watch Don't Think Twice. It's a good movie. He gets Weekend Live, which is supposed to be Saturday Night Live. But
that's right.
Weekend Live.
I remember that.
I understand they couldn't get the rights or whatever.
I think I always was weirded out by how old Birbiglia was in the bunk bed in the top of the room with all the other
which he plays at, but like one could argue not enough. You know, like it's like the way that they're behaving, his character seems like they should be like 29.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Birbiglia was like clearly in his late 30s.
if that.
Yeah, so which is fine. That's a fine age to be. But one could argue that maybe he was even playing down his oldness while acknowledging his oldness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A little bit. Yeah, a little bit of both.
But needless to say, they're dropping like flies. The resentment is tearing the droids apart.
It's bound to happen. You know, I think as time goes, especially, you know, you had the YouTube fame, the TikTok fame came on my way.
The TikTok fame was hot. There's hot and fresh. This was hot and fast.
Hot and fast and hot and brief. That's
and then you said you backed off of it because it was getting too big.
That's the challenge, you know. And there's only so much you can handle when you blow up on TikTok.
Yeah, you got to leave them wanting more.
Yeah, and we've done that. We've absolutely done that.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, the one listener who's joined us from our TikTok work, thank you for still hanging with us. And we will get more TikToks, we promise. Just like we will finish High Republic, Light of the Jedi.
Probably, I mean, we'll play it by ear, but probably at the end of this episode.
We've got to be at the end of this episode, right?
Yeah.
We've got to get into the Rising Storm. I have to caveat it every time with just like, I love these books. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
We're making jokes, but they're great.
Because we keep saying, like, there's not a lot of Star Wars stuff going on, but there is.
There is.
I said this last time, I'll say it this time. Listen, we're showing you everything. Life is busy, and sometimes you don't have time to catch up on all the things that you love for the podcast, but you do have time to do the podcast because above all, that's the thing you love.
Exactly.
So,
it is above all.
Yeah, like one could argue that we like doing the podcast. We prioritize doing the podcast over intaking the things that we do the podcast about.
Yeah, that's accurate. We're over the consumption of the content. We're more about the actual creation.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, big news, and of course, follow us on all the social. We talked about it before. YouTube, DroidsPod, Gmail, droidspod@gmail.com, DroidsPod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, DroidsPod. Take a look at the stuff that's been up there. We'll get some new stuff, we promise. And follow us, let you know what you think of the podcast. But, Ryan, we look at the Emmy nominations. 20 Emmy nominations for The Mandalorian, including drama series. And now a year ago, we had what I think is a similar conversation to what we're about to have. But I find it just a little bit off base and just kind of thematically wrong that The Mandalorian is best nominated for best drama series. And I think you and I are in agreement on this. It's not that we don't love the show. We absolutely love the show. We have so much fun with it. We think that what they're doing is exceptional. The stories continue to build. We felt like some episodes were outstanding. Some choices towards the end maybe we didn't love. But one way or another, this is an incredibly well-executed, well-acted, well-written series that deserves recognition. But when you think of a drama series, and I would say, oddly enough, my thoughts on best drama series have all been limited series as of late. Mm-hmm. The longer-running drama series that are 13 episodes plus, or I guess in the case of The Mandalorian, it's not 13 episodes plus, but it wasn't considered a limited series. Interesting. I wonder how they're actually defining that.
Well, I think it's with the implication that there will be more.
That's a good point. It's not just a one-off limited series.
Yeah.
Either way, I think the other nominees includes like The Handmaid's Tale, This Is Us. I'd have to go back and look at the rest of the list, but it's
I'm looking at
The Boys,
The Boys, Bridgerton, The Crown, Handmaid's Tale, Lovecraft Country, The Mandalorian, and Pose.
Which is always interesting when a show has been canceled and then makes it into the best drama series like Lovecraft Country. Odd choice to end the show.
What a bummer. What a bummer that they canceled that show.
It is. Not just, like Crown and Bridgerton, not just because they're British series, but Handmaid's Tale, Crown, Bridgerton, The Boys. I don't know. They felt.
Oh, listen. Okay, so this gets into, and not to cut you off, Mike.
No, good.
But this gets into an interesting conversation because it's like obviously we love these genre things. Mm-hmm. You know, we love The Mandalorian, we love the Marvel shows, yada yada. So it's like, am I feeding into this idea that like of what quote unquote prestige means, and like should we flatten out everything? And like, you know, give into the democratization of these things where it's like The Mandalorian can exist next to The Handmaid's Tale or like whatever. And I'm not even saying that like with a quality assessment. I'm just like in terms of tone, you know, like people think of that's not like an awards looking show the same way that they're like that's not an awards movie.
Yeah.
And when it comes to movies, I'm very quick to want there to be like I was thrilled when like Mad Max Fury Road got nominated for Best Picture. It felt like a step for like genre filmmaking because it's like that wasn't an obvious awards contender. Mm-hmm. Like there's an aesthetic to awards contenders, there's a tone to awards contenders, and the more that gets opened up, I think that it leads to it imply. With the understanding that award shows are kind of like meaningless.
Yeah. Well,
but they also are meaningful, and we've talked about that because it leads to more eyes on things, blah, 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 blah. Which is true. You know, it's like a show can get, for instance, a show that some people may not watch or may not know is like amazing, even though it's been all over like the internet, people saying how great it was, but like I May Destroy You, like if it wins Emmy for Best Limited Series, then it'll get more eyeballs on it and more people should watch it, and that's great.
Exactly.
The Mandalorian doesn't need more eyeballs on it.
No.
And I'll throw this in too. The Boys is a show I like very much. I would never say that it should be nominated for Outstanding Drama Series. No. And not just because I'm like, it's a genre thing, but because I'm just like, yeah, I don't really think... I don't really think it deserves it. I just like I don't. There are just like better shows. There are shows that are better crafted, that are more thoughtful. And again, I'm not saying this as I'm saying this value neutral, where it's like these are not the space that these shows are occupying, especially drama series. And it's maybe there should be like a different category. I know that that's not fair. I could be eating my own words and contradicting myself from things I've said on the podcast before. I think it's cool that it's opening up the kind of shows that get into these categories. However, opening it up to the biggest show from the biggest corporation and the biggest franchise on the planet, I don't think is like really contributing to that conversation very much. Beyond that, the fact that Jon Favreau was nominated for the first season, the first episode of the season with Timothy Olyphant, baffling. The fact that like, if The Mandalorian didn't get 20 nominations, it got one nomination, and it was for the writing of the episode The Jedi, I'd be like, that's cool. That makes sense. That's a fantastic episode of television. It's almost a capsule episode. And, it's being recognized because it was, like, that kind of thing. I also think that like the Clone Wars has won many daytime Emmys despite it being a primetime show, and I think that that's great because it's like I think it's at the end of the day programming for children and teenagers that happens to expand to adults that I think was doing phenomenal work.
Yeah.
So, but I just don't. I watch The Mandalorian, and to me, it's like candy, and I think that's great. I love candy, but like I wouldn't give candy a James Beard Award, I suppose. Why not the Saturn Awards? I don't know. I know I sound like a blowhard. I don't mean it that way. It's just like,
but I, to be honest, the thing that keeps coming to mind to me is the category thing you're talking about. There's, I think I need to have a better way to describe it, but I think of it as these are action adventure series. I don't think there's drama inherent in it in the sense of anything drama than aside from like, I guess there's the interpersonal relationship between the Mandalorian and Grogu, but it's just not the same as like a good character arc focused on dialogue and characterization rather than the exterior pressures of an action adventure series.
Yeah, and the things that are great about The Mandalorian, first off, standalone, I'm not sure if although people who aren't Star Wars fans like it, but yeah, I'm not like, man, what outstanding like craft. Although, and I'm not taking away from the people who do it. I feel like a lot of times the drama series goes to like shows that look the most expensive.
Yeah.
And again, this sounds like we're like down on The Mandalorian. I just think, I don't know. It was a weird, when I read that it got the most nominations. Yeah. I was just like, all right. Like, I think I loved the show.
It's a level of just like, again, I expect to be moved by an incredible drama series. I was excited, but I wasn't moved by The Mandalorian. I mean, I guess it's a little unfair, and I'm sure some of our listeners would jump in and say, like, it wasn't moving to you when Din had to give up Grogu. I mean, yeah, that was, but it was one scene versus a regular.
It was also completely undercut by the thing that happened right before it.
Well, true. But I mean, I just think the idea of one scene making it a drama doesn't really do it for me. And sure, there was also the scene with Bill Burr and that moment where he's talking about his experience as a warrior for the Imperial officers. But I don't know. I just, you look at the category and what it's been over the years and the years of Mad Men and Breaking Bad and even Better Call Saul and The Sopranos and
there's like a direct,
The Americans and like the drama. I don't know. This is not the same. There's a direct,
like, Lovecraft Country is a very genre show.
Yeah.
There's like every episode, there's like ghost stories in it. There's monster stories in it. I think that 100% deserves to be nominated for a drama series because it's like incredibly crafted. And I mean this is like a story. I understand that like it's all difficult to make. But like to me, I'm like, and also like, not for nothing, The Crown is a show that I think matches the aesthetic of a best drama series perfectly.
Yeah.
Like it's like what people expect, and I don't think that deserves to be in there either. Like so, like it's not just specific to The Mandalorian. I just think it's odd that, again, it's like a thing where this is a really well executed show. Obviously, I love Star Wars. Obviously, I really enjoyed the second season of the show, but at the same time, it's like, what? This is going to be snobby of me. For drama series, I would want things that are like somewhat challenging, you know? I thought that like Lovecraft Country was challenging on like a narrative level, on like it presented like ideas that were challenging, and it presented story in like interesting and challenging ways. There's nothing challenging about The Mandalorian. Yeah.
And there's nothing complicated about it in it as well.
Yeah, and that's why we like it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that's what's beautiful about it, but that doesn't mean that it's like the most Emmy nominations.
Yeah. Well, and like, this is why I would go back to the limited series and be like, almost any one of those with the exception of WandaVision, Mare, I May Destroy You, Queen's Gambit,
that's
Underground
a stacked
Railroad.
Category.
It is. And I like Wanda being part of it. Okay, good luck. But Mare of Easttown, I May Destroy You, Queen's Gambit, Underground Railroad, those are drama series. They're limited. But that's what I'm thinking of when I think of a drama. I mean, I May Destroy You obviously has, and Mayor of Easttown has good comedy as well.
Yeah, I mean, like any good story will have elements of everything.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's yeah, I
Gene
think
Smart brought the comedy in every scene.
Yeah, there should just be a category for Gene Smart performances.
She's nominated twice, so
I mean,
she's
last
taking
year
home something.
in Outstanding Limited Series, like Watchmen was in there, which again, extremely genre, but for my money, one of the best television shows ever produced.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not specific to like the genre thing. It's just, having watched The Mandalorian, if you had like said to me, aside from the fact that last season got nominated for a bunch, like, hey, do you think this should be nominated for a bunch of Emmys? I'd be like, it was great, but like, no.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Like,
well, it is interesting that outstanding writing for The Mandalorian is both Favreau and Filoni. They have 2 nominations for outstanding writing.
Because
One for the
Favreau
Jedi.
got nominated for the last episode, right?
Yeah, and Filoni got nominated for the Jedi. But I kind of find that fascinating because I'm like, so again, it doesn't really matter what the awards say, but I'm like, you can't give it to the final episode over the Jedi just from our perspective. But what do I know?
Yeah. I mean, congratulations to everyone who worked on the show.
Oh yeah.
It's like these are amazing craftspeople at work. So it's like I don't want to take away, and I don't want to yuck on anyone's yum. I love The Mandalorian. I love watching it. It's just like, again, people act like what a win because like finally Star Wars is being recognized at the Emmys, and it's like this isn't an underdog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The same way that like WandaVision isn't an underdog.
You know who's not an underdog? Don Cheadle, who had 19 seconds of screen time. But
I genuinely
guest actor.
I genuinely didn't remember him being in it.
Neither did I knew he was in it, but I didn't really. It made me sit for a second and think, was he in it more than I thought? And no, he's not.
No, and that show was kind of bad.
Yeah. Sadly, but I honestly,
but he had a very like funny, like in stride reaction to it.
He did, but I think
he
Carl
must have
Lumbly,
been as surprised as anybody.
If anybody's nominated for anything from that series, it should be Carl Lumbly.
It should be who? Oh, yes,
Isaiah.
Yeah, he was great.
He was the best part of the series, and especially when you're making this guest actor nomination, how can you give it to Don Cheadle? Did they mean to write a different name? Like that's the only thing that makes any sense.
Just like didn't watch it, and nothing. Obviously, we think Don Cheadle's a tremendous actor, but like,
oh, he's a tremendous actor, but he knows he wasn't in the movie or in the
show.
Like,
isn't his scene just like he's at like a?
Yeah, it's 5 minutes.
It's a cameo.
Yeah, well, that's
and
why
it's
they
also
call him
like
a guest actor. But
it's like not like, I think Don Cheadle would say it's not like it was like acting.
it was going through the motion. I guess he did
He's
have
probably
to say,
out before lunch, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And he had to tell him and remind him that Steve gave him the shield. So that was at least a little dramatic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, from that, still talking about The Mandalorian for a moment. Kind of cool. And as much as I may not love the finale of season 2, they're doing a Disney Gallery episode just about the making of the finale, which is going to see some of the de-aging process for Luke, which
cool.
The choice of Luke, whether you like it or not, I'm still all about those behind-the-scenes features about how they do it.
I love it.
I want to see it, and I'm excited about that, and I'll be ready to watch an hour about it. August 25th is when that is available.
Cool.
Which will be a fun way to look back a little bit on the series and just see more of, making of Star Wars has always been close to my heart because I think I spent a lot of my time learning about movie making from those early on, from the original series, from the prequels. We've talked about it on the podcast before. I mean, Chris was watching every step of the way and still images on 1999 online or whatever it was, 97 when they were shooting it. I love a behind-the-scenes Star Wars feature, and give us another one. That's great. That's wonderful as we wait for Book of Boba Fett in Season 3 of Mandalorian.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I am interested in the de-aging thing, like, for my life. But I am interested just in how they did it.
When we're all in augmented reality in the next 5 years, you can have a de-aged face be sculpted on front of on your face, and you'll be good to go.
You know what I thought was weird is that, like, I was watching Black Widow, And de-aging, or like retouching, I should say, because it's not always specifically de-aging, has become so like ubiquitous in movies that it's like, I understand that, like, you know, that movie stars are movie stars, but I was like, is it like, does Hollywood really want to send the message that, like, Scarlett Johansson, it isn't like her face needs to be fixed up a little bit for us to look at it, you know, or like that, like, I mean, I don't know what Brad Pitt looks like without retouching or whatever, but I imagine it's totally fine.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like thinking, like, even Brad Pitt's a bad example because he's not very young anymore, but not that old people shouldn't be allowed to be presented on screen as well, but like, he'd be more of a candidate for de-aging, you know, because he's older, but like, what a weird world we live in. Absolutely.
It is strange. You're right, especially something though with like Scarlett Johansson, who you put a different wig on her and she already looks young. I mean, I don't think we need to do anything to make her look 19 or whatever they're trying to do.
Or just like sometimes you watch movies and it looks like they put like that like Instagram filter on everyone's face. And it's just like, can't we just, I mean, they're the best looking people in the world. Isn't that enough?
Can't we all get a little bit of that love in the non-celebrity star-driven movie world? Like, put another filter on my camera. That's fine. Help me out.
Yeah, put some retouching on my face in real time.
Yeah.
Leave Scarlett Johansson's face alone.
That's what I'm talking about with the augmented reality. We're going to have
Ewan
use the real-time
McGregor's face
engine.
alone. It's perfect.
Ewan is doing fine. All congratulations to Ewan on the birth of another child, right?
How about that? And his nomination in Halston.
Yeah, and he did get nomination in Halston, which I have not seen. But I did recently watch Birds of Prey, and I felt like he was the best part of the movie. Loved him in that.
He's really going for it. I liked him in it too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say he's the best part of the movie, but I liked him.
I don't know. We can get into that conversation separately, but...
Sure. That sandwich looked really good.
It did, didn't it? I thought that might have actually been the best part of the movie. I know there's some people who love Birds of Prey. I just didn't find it.
I liked the cast a lot. I thought, I mean, this isn't the Birds of Prey cast, but I liked the cast a lot. And Prey cast. That's funny. I'm talking about the cast. The Birds of Prey, the Birds of Podcast. I like the cast a lot. I'm a big Messina head.
Oh yeah.
Huge Messina fan.
It's an interesting choice that he made it in there. You know, if you remember, is the earliest appearance of Messina in You've Got Mail as the guy in the bookstore who can't find the books about ballet slippers and shoes, the shoe books? I remember him. That's his first appearance.
I don't want to go toe-to-toe with you on this. I thought that was a woman asking that question.
It is.
I know the scene you're talking about. Meg Ryan's... he's the store. He's the retail. He's the store
employee.
Clerk.
Yeah, he's a store
employee. And then Meg Ryan starts saying she names like 5 books. She starts crying. She goes like the ballet shoes. That's my favorite.
Yeah. And then he turns to her and she said, "What was that last name again?" You know, because he can't figure it out. Yeah, but
FOX. You've Got Mail. What a time! But man, Nora Ephron. What a writer.
What a time. What a time. If you ever just want to feel like it's fall perpetually, watch that over and over.
I am a huge, big Nora Ephron head, too. I'm a Messina head and a Nora Ephron head. But mathematically, Julie and Julia should be my favorite movie.
And I'm wrong. I'm off by 2 films. You've Got Mail. He was a Fox Books salesperson. His very first role in the all-time classic that anybody who went to high school in the 90s watched, and I would say any young man who went to high school in the 90s, Rounders. He played
He's
Higgins.
in Rounders?
I don't recall him in Rounders. My guess is he's one of the law school buddies of Matt Damon. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, he's probably in like the law school group.
That's my thought. And then he's in The Siege with Denzel right after that. But those are his early days.
How about it? Give him his money. That's my Teddy. What is it? Teddy KGB?
Teddy KGB.
Give him his money.
Big man.
Rounders is like a movie that could only be made in 1998.
Yeah, I think you're fair. That's right on that.
Because it was just like these actors are going to be super famous but are not quite yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're great, and we're making a $20 million movie, or probably 15.
And we'll bring in Malkovich to be able to push it.
Yeah, like John Turturro's in it, Martin Landau's in it.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right, Martin Landau. And let's not forget though about good old Messina in the newsroom, because everybody needed a good role of a network executive, and he played it well despite the rest of the show.
I mean, but I'm reacting as if I've never seen the newsroom, which couldn't be more opposite of the truth. Because I've seen the newsroom many times, despite what you said. It's one of those shows that's a guilty pleasure for me, because it's like, Aaron Sorkin has some issues in his writing. He's obsessed with like men saving women.
Yeah.
In like this like what can only be described as a 1940s chivalry quote unquote way.
Yeah.
Where they're like, "Stop it, lady, I know what's best for you," kind of thing. But man, oh man, do I like listening to his characters talk.
Who doesn't? You know what? I still haven't seen Trial of the Chicago 7. Is that what it is?
It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Anyway,
we've got Molly's Game. Molly's Game is really.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I mean, I've Sorkin and Few Good Men. Just go back. I still want to go and see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard this. Aaron Sorkin's dialogue is really striking.
I think I lived on college in eating Rice Krispies while watching the West Wing seasons on a loop, while the
Sure.
Sorkin seasons. Let's
You didn't stick around for the John Wells only seasons?
Apologies to John Wells, but yes. Anyway, let's wrap it up here. Last thing we want to talk about as we get into anybody's IMDb and turn it into the Messina cast. Star Wars Visions. We heard about it in the announcement from Disney Plus, but now we have a first look, and very exciting. This is coming in September, an anthology series. So how's that going to be nominated? Well, if it's animated, they're probably going to give it a daytime Emmy nomination, because they're not going to give it any credit there. But it's coming out soon. They have a bunch of different anime studios working on this. I'm not an anime head. I don't have a lot of background with it, so I wasn't familiar with the studios that they mentioned. But the level of work that they represent in this short teaser looks stunning.
Yeah,
looks like
awesome.
a world that is, they're not just dipping their toe lightly in to what they're doing with anime. They're going full bore and giving them freedom and not asking them to. I'm sure there was a list of you still have to do this to make it Star Wars, but they didn't seem to be holding their hands and directing them to be like, it's going to be all the familiar things that you've seen before, just animated in anime. It's anime in its own world that happens to be Star Wars, and a bunch of unique and different stories. A lot of them look great. The first one that really connected with me was the twins. And the reason why was just it dawned in my head, and obviously, Luke and Leia are sisters, or sister and brother. Between that, I just thought, oh, wow. The idea that there could be two twins, one that goes to the light and one goes to the dark. Why have we not seen that before? That is perfect. I can't wait to see what they do with that. It just immediately clicked oh, that's intriguing. I want to see that.
Yeah, the aesthetic of that one really struck me too. What was so cool about that little teaser they showed was that they showed snippets from every piece that a studio's doing. Most of it was concept art. We didn't really see anything in motion yet, but everything looked different.
Yep.
From each other. The variety of the animation styles or the design styles is striking. And I think that this is. I think any kind of concept like this is kind of great, especially in a world like Star Wars. It's just there are so many opportunities for these little bottle anthology pieces. Also, when they haven't kind of hinted at how long each one will be, but I imagine it'll be between 20 and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
When a studio is putting that much attention into 20 or 30 minutes, you usually get something of working on a pretty high level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not a huge anime aficionado, so I didn't know any of the studios by name in terms of what other things they've done, but I know that from what I saw and the artists speaking, that it got me pretty amped.
Well, and I just kind of now thought about, I remember how excited I was to see the Animatrix. Did you watch that when that came out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I don't know if it was right when it came out, but I certainly watched it.
And it just struck me, and this again feels like a way of you might find a new favorite part of Star Wars in this story on its own, because in one of these stories, because they're allowing these unique creators who, you get the sense they've already been incredibly successful in the anime that they've created.
Yeah.
And maybe they take a new look at it and have a new take on it, and it might be memorable enough that you find a new corner of Star Wars to bask in, which I think is really just exciting.
Also, that they went to like actual Japanese animation studios as opposed to being like, we're doing an anime style Star Wars show.
Yeah.
Like they committed to going to Japanese studios, and like that will alone, like, just like, everybody loves Star Wars. That's a global thing. But like, the cultural shift of a different perspective from like a Japanese studio is going to make something like story-wise different than an American studio or European studio, whatever. And I think that in Star Wars, we haven't gotten a super, like, that I'm not sure that's really been done on a mass level before. Obviously, filmmakers within the Star Wars world are from different places, but something that it's like being made completely outside of like like Lucasfilm is involved, but like the studios making it are completely outside the U.S. And I think that that's really cool.
Well, and I think it goes back to what anybody would always say, a little bit of Star Wars roots, right? You think back to Japanese cinema and the samurai cinema and Kurosawa and the inspiration that Lucas had. And so to bring it back and almost, hand this story in a way back over to Japanese creators, obviously ones who hadn't been involved in Star Wars before, or inspired Star Wars before, it feels fitting, and it feels like, there's a lot there that can still be pulled from samurai storytelling that you could then bring back into Star Wars in this way, which should be really exciting.
Yeah, and all of the concept art was just really rad, and it's coming out soon. I mean, it's in September.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Ryan, is once again we will be creating content on this podcast and not consuming the content soon enough. I think That's with correct. This one we're going to need to watch, especially because it's not like any of us have any other things to catch up on before we watch this. I'm looking at myself. I'm pointing my finger right here. That we can just dive into these episodes. We can just. There is
something more, for some reason, digestible about anthology things usually, because you can do one at a time.
Yeah.
It feels like less of a commitment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, not that I'm sure I'll sit down one rainy afternoon and watch all of the Bad Batch and love it.
Yeah.
It's just that it just feels like more of a commitment. But I think that I just think this is a cool thing to do. The Animatrix is actually like a perfect like analogy. It didn't cross my mind, but it's like it's every single piece of that I think had a completely different art style, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the one that like everyone remembers is the Final Flight of the Osiris, because it had like that striking CG thing that I'm sure now looks quite dated.
Probably.
But it was like that Final Fantasy Spirits Within kind of like real life CG thing.
Yeah.
But I'd like to go back and actually revisit the Animatrix, because I'm sure that the ones that I don't remember are probably the most interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? I remember loving a couple of them and like having like, oh, that's a story that I just, I'm all about that. And I've totally forgotten it now because it's been.
I think it's on HBO now.
Is it? It must be.
I think so.
But it's been, at least 15, maybe more. How many years? I don't remember it since it came out, because it didn't come out right when the movie came out. But
listen, I rewatched all of the Matrix movies twice since the pandemic started. Those second two movies also kick ass.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Like, it's like everyone likes to talk about how bad they are, and they are not bad at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if anybody has led the reappraisal of a lot of films from that era, you are right at the forefront.
Listen, I didn't know I was paving, but it's what it is. And I'm a thought leader in this area. But but geez Louise, for movies that were made by giant studios and were some of the biggest franchises in the world, like, find me $200 million movies that are so chock full of ideas.
Yeah. You're not going, and especially not now.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to do this thing of like they don't make them like that anymore. It's like it was a complete fluke. Like the Wachowskis were given like a blank check because The Matrix was so great and like obviously a cultural phenomenon. And like the Wachowskis have always kind of known what to do with a blank check.
Yeah.
Whether people like it or not.
Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah, of course.
listen, they're making choices. Speed Racer was not made by by people who didn't care about what they were making.
Yeah. Well, and how about Matrix 4 on its way? I mean, I
Can't
would imagine she's not Lana Wachowski coming back to do that on her own is not for a reason without putting thought and putting, decisions and actual choices in it.
Well, like, remember the Wachowskis weren't going to be involved.
Yeah.
At least in directing it, and then they announced that Lana was coming to direct it, and I was like, "Oh, great,
Yeah.
perfect." That's the Matrix 4 that I want.
Is that going to get you in the theater versus at home? Because it will be HBO Max.
No, it will be HBO Max.
This is coming out soon, isn't it? Isn't it like in the next few months, or is it?
I mean, it was supposed to come out. It was supposed to come out in May, but we haven't seen a trailer. I think they've said December now.
Oh, okay, it's December. I mean, hopefully by December I'll be ready to go into the theater. I'm a bit surprised
it's
that
dependent
Neil
on a
Patrick
lot of
Harris
things.
is in it, but
Oh yeah, he is in it, isn't he?
yeah, interesting.
There's actually a lot of people in it that it's like it's exciting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
Neil Patrick Harris, you could feel however you want, but
I don't
I
have a
think he's
problem with Neil
talented.
Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
Just to me, anybody he's played, it seems sort of out of place, unless I guess is he playing another version of the Merovingian?
he's extremely famous.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, and something does happen when someone's on a sitcom, where it's like, I think that, like, it's like if David Schwimmer was in The Matrix. It's just like you associate them so much.
It was hard in Band of Brothers. It was difficult to watch him show up in
Isn't
Band
Jimmy
of
Fallon
Brothers.
in there too?
Oh yeah, it's a very rough moment, but thankfully Jimmy Fallon's only in it for less than 5 minutes.
But I think because I think Neil Patrick Harris is like obviously extremely talented.
Yeah.
But it's also like you're very much looking, but we'll see what he does. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm excited to see Jonathan Groff, and I say it from the sense of
he's
Mindhunter is fantastic. He's
so great.
I want give him a leading role. I hope, but I mean I don't know. I hope he's got more than just a bit part.
And Lily was not involved in directing this one, correct?
No,
she's kind of taken a step away from directing, I think, for a while.
As far as I know, but
because I think Lana directed the end of Sense8 by herself also.
Oh, did she?
But regardless, the Wachowskis are extremely interesting filmmakers.
And I'm still Speed Racer, as you brought up. I'm anxious because I have not seen it and I want to see it.
I'm like a Jupiter Ascending apologist.
I'm ready to see that as well. I want to go back down through the whole catalog. Are you?
If you want to watch a B movie that costs $200 million, that's filled with ideas.
What about Cloud Atlas from your perspective?
Cloud Atlas. So, Cloud Atlas is a tough one because there's some things in it that like seem so well intentioned, but potentially incredibly offensive.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it, and I will say, how you go with a certain group of people, and because you're out in a social gathering of like 8 or more people seeing a movie, you don't really internalize the movie in the same way. Mm-hmm. That was what happened with me with Cloud Atlas.
Sure, and I think that Cloud Atlas. And this may not be okay. So I'm saying this like, maybe not okay. I think that Cloud Atlas is a tremendous piece of filmmaking, and it's incredibly ambitious. Mm-hmm. I think truly what they did with like having actors play different genders, different races. Like I think that the intention of it was like obviously incredibly well intentioned of being like we are all the same, and so like a soul is a soul and like the body is interchangeable, like that kind of thing. And I think that like they had nothing but great intentions, and obviously knowing they're kind of the Wachowskis, Tom Tykwer was involved also, but the Wachowskis' journey, like obviously that's like identity and specifically gender identity has been like a very big piece of their work, like looking all the way back. In terms of like sexual identity, gender identity, just kind of like how we conform into like the world's ideas of what we should be. So I think that with all that in mind, the intentions were great. However, that there is some imagery that is like very fraught. In it. Yeah. That like it's like intention or no, I'm not sure this was like okay. Mm-hmm. But again, I feel like it's so well intentioned. It's hard to just like write it off. Yeah. Like it may have been a miscalculation, but there doesn't seem to be an ounce of like malice or even like lack of thought. Like it's not like they did it and then you're like, man, they should have thought of that. Yeah. Like how offensive that would have been, like so many movies. But
they also, and to me, it's also like if it's coming from a place of someone who has no experience in the idea of gender, beyond just the standard gender that they were brought up with, or however they were born and how they lived in the cisgender kind of way.
Yeah, how they were socialized. And
yeah, it would be different. They came from a perspective of actually having understanding of what it means to be a gender and change a gender and represent different genders.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's just something to be said there that you can have a little bit more, not leeway, but a little bit more ground to stand on in the conversation about what they're trying to do when they have more to pull from versus someone who's like, I'm just going to explore this without any knowledge.
Yeah, and I think that it also is like what they are exploring. Not only gender, obviously. There's race and stuff in that movie.
Yeah, of course.
That is what they are exploring. So like you can't say that it's being done in an unthoughtful way. Yeah, it's like it's not like a side aspect to the movie that you're like, man, oh man, I wish someone had told them that this was offensive. Like that kind of thing. It's like they decided to approach it that way because that's what they were exploring.
Yeah.
So,
but this is again in our current culture, and even then, you take a snippet of it and no one thinks about the context and what the choices that were made, and it can be just horribly offensive to people who don't take the time to understand what they were doing or trying to do.
And if someone, but even within the context, I would understand if someone was like, I still find it offensive.
Yeah, of course.
Because
I
you
think
literally have a white actor playing an Asian person, or like a white actor playing a black person, or like whatever.
But I would say I think most though people didn't even give it as much as like we just have a headline or a tweet reading culture. There's a lot of people who didn't even get to the point to, experience it in context. Yeah,
I do think it's a thoughtful movie. I would not begrudge anyone who would say that that's still being considered. I find it offensive, but I do think it is a fascinating film, and I think that they have a fascinating oeuvre, and I'm very excited for Matrix 4.
Well, Ryan, once again,
how did this happen?
No, we have put ourselves in a position to submit for another podcast Emmy with this episode of just the two of us.
Sorry, Chris and Sam, number one, haven't had a chance to be a part of it.
I think what puts us over the top, though, is doesn't Chris Messina hold a lot of weight in the podcast Emmy voting?
Huge. Everybody knows this. He is the silent puppet master of the podcasting world.
Eventually it'll be revealed. We just play it the way we do now, knowing what benefits that brings to the pod.
That's right. And Chris Messina, if you're listening, I've seen the movie Monogamy, and I thought it was really good.
Let's just take that clip and put that on Twitter so that we can get him tagged in it, and then that way we'll actually get it to him. Because he subscribes, but it's a lot to ask to listen to every episode.
Of course. No.
That is going to do it for the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. We will catch you next week. And Ryan, committing now, Light of the Jedi next week?
Yeah, we ran out of time because we were talking about Cloud Atlas. But we'll get into it next week. Don't worry.
That is going to do it for the Droids.
What they throw?
Anna? You guys going to see Cloud Atlas?